to be. Respect is his golden rule. Organized to be the best in school. Sycamore teachers teach the kids new things. Learning doesn't stop until the last bell rings. Super Sycamore comes out at night, stamping super work that students do right. If you want Super Sycamore to notice you, don't be discouraged when something is hard to do. Work hard and be excited. Show respect and organize until the top. You will rise.
Episode 57, An Apple a Day.
Let's get it started in here.
And the bass keeps running and running and running and running and running and running.
Let's get it started. Ha! Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Ha! Let's get it started in here.
After a long summer break here at Sycamore Creek Elementary, without super work to super stamp, or teachers to high five, or students to give shout outs to, our hero Super Sycamore is thrilled to be zipping through the halls knowing that an exciting new school year has begun. And he wants to challenge students to have a growth mindset this year, where you believe in yourself that you can always improve. And speaking of ways SCE has improved, check out the new STEM room, complete with green screen, blue screen, 3D printers, and other awesome gadgets and gizmos aplenty. It makes Super Sycamore want to dance. In the first grade pod, Super Sycamore welcomes Mrs. Nichols' class back to school with a super stamp. He stamps some super work hanging on the wall, and he stops to give Michael a super stamp because his spaceship librarian is neat and organized. It looks amazing, Michael. Continuing through first grade, he stamps Mrs. Fleming's Friends of 10 display. Villainous poster catches his eye because of how colorful and how much hard work was clearly put into it. On to second grade, where he stamps Katie's selfie from Mrs. Boland's room. Her handwriting is beautiful, and she was very descriptive. Meanwhile, Super Sinister is up to no good. He's doing what all villains at Sycamore Creek Elementary have done, trying to come up with a plan to stop Super Sycamore from being a school hero. Today's plan is to use a rope, a hula hoop, and a post-it note to... I'm not sure what's going on here. We'll have to see how this one plays out.
We wanted everything.
When Super Sycamore comes out of a classroom, he analyzes what he sees. And much to no one's surprise, he's too smart for it and simply steps over the trap. It looks like back to the drawing board for Super Sinister. In the meantime, Super Sycamore continues stamping. He sees the Fact Fluency Mario Kart racetrack outside Mrs. Miller's and Mr. Bianco's room, and he loves what he sees. He's also impressed with the Flying Pickles fractions. It reminds him of one of his favorite foods, jalapenos. Yummy. As stamping continues, Super Sinister continues brainstorming. This one looks a little more promising. He'll prop up a box using a stick. He'll yank the stick away using a string once Super Sycamore is inside the box. To finish off this plan, Super Sinister takes some super work off of the walls to use as bait to get Super Sycamore into the box. When Super Sycamore finds the papers laying on the ground, he naturally starts picking them up and stamping them, just like any good hero would do. And as he does this, it leads him into the room.
Falling too fast to prepare for this. Tripping in the world could be dangerous. Everybody circling as vultures. Negative, nepotist. Everybody waiting for the fall of man.
The fact that Super Sycamore is clearly too big to fit under the box, as well as Super Sinister's slow reaction time, the plan is ruined again. It looks like it's time to think of something else. After a how you doing hug from Mr. Dave, our hero continues into the third grade pod, where he pops into Mrs. Payne's room. He realizes this could be a great space for her class's morning meeting. On his way by, he passes Reed Dillon's emoji intro, and he decides it needs a super stamp. Then he heads over to Mrs. Spencer's, Mr. Henneman's, and Mrs. Bradbury's corner, where they have a whole class quest, and he sees that they've completed their first quest and have to beat the boss. Gamification is awesome. In the meantime, Super Sinister lays out a new plan. He hopes that our hero will see the Lego wall in the media center and the Legos that trail over to his initials, where there he'll discover a bag of toxic food disguised as burritos. That would definitely put a stop to Super Sycamore stamping. Sure enough, Super Sycamore stops in to see what's going on in the media center. And as he zips around, he eventually comes to the new Lego wall. He sees the Lego trail and his initials and, of course, the bag of toxic food. But he knows better than to take a bag of food when he doesn't know whose it is or where it came from. So it looks like Super Sinister has more brainstorming in his future. But in the present, Super Sycamore loves that Avani in Miss Curl's room wants to be an artist. That girl's got skills. Super Sycamore stops into 4th grade teacher Mrs. Fannon's room for a handshake. And while he enjoys seeing the landform displays outside Miss Mastrangelo's room, he stops to admire the extra effort put in by Nathan and Grace. Seeing the bag of food in the library made Super Sycamore hungry, so he can't help but notice Mrs. Mosley's M&M display. In another attempt to rid the school of its hero, Super Sinister has yet another plan. This time, it's a pretend note from 1st grade teacher Mrs. Fernie asking to fix a broken iPad. But what Super Sycamore won't know is that it's really an electrified iPad meant to give a shock. But when Super Sycamore reads the note, he notices something suspicious about it. Mrs. Fernie spells her name with an E at the end, not a Y. So he leaves the iPad alone and takes the note and throws it away. A frustrated Super Sinister corrects his mistake and moves on to more brainstorming.
It's incredible. You don't have to go, don't. Do you know what you started?
Meanwhile, Super Sycamore sees a beautiful display that reminds us that every child is an artist. Thanks for your artwork, Gabrielle, Raymond, Gregory, Josh, and Michael. And after another "how's it going" hug, this time from Mrs. Legg, he stamps the kindergartner's work hanging down the main hallway. And while that's happening, after looking over his other unsuccessful attempts, Super Sinister has come up with a final idea that he believes will be unstoppable. A fruit freeze. And with that idea in mind, he gathers his supplies, including potassium nitrate, boomberry juice, and fluxweed, which was picked at the full moon. He mixes the ingredients together, pours in some wormwood dust, and reaches for the Honeycrisp apple, which he knows Super Sycamore won't be able to resist.
And now we're rocking on the dance floor, acting crazy. Your hands are on my waist.
While the apple sits in the potion, he pours in the last ingredient, Gertie root vapor.
Take you away, let's escape into the
Super Sinister checks his timer and then removes the apple at just the precise moment. After he inspects it, he places it on the table to be found by our hero. Then he cleans up the evidence that any science experiment occurred in the art room.
I just can't refuse it. Like the
Meanwhile, an unsuspecting Super Sycamore continues to stamp away, including a chart of good and poor choices.
take you away, let's escape into the music. DJ, let it play. I just can't refuse it.
He also gives his stamp of approval to Ava, Aiden, and Rowan's letters, numbers, and shapes classification poster. Eventually, he finds his way into Mrs. Mesher Miller's art room, where he eventually notices the red, not-so-delicious apple. And because superheroing makes you hungry, he inspects it as a possible healthy snack.
Like the way you do this, keep on rocking to it. Please don't stop.
Unfortunately, the moment he takes a bite, Super Sinister's freeze fruit takes effect, and Super Sycamore is frozen into a statue. At that point, Super Sinister comes out from hiding, loads our hero onto a cart, and rolls him away.